Well, hello, Andrew here again, and today we're looking at the Gospel text for Sunday the 9th of May. We pick up the narrative in John chapter 15 verses 9 through to 17, and this is part of the narrative for the night of Jesus' betrayal. It was the upper room discourse as we have it in John's Gospel. As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. I have said these things to you so that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be complete. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. No one has greater love than this, than to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. I do not call you servants any longer, because the servant does not know what the master is doing. But I have called you friends, because I've made known to you everything I've heard from my Father. You did not choose me, but I chose you. And I appointed you to go and bear fruit, fruit that will last, so that the Father will give you whatever you ask him in my name. I am giving you these commands so that you may love one another. Now, what I'm going to share this morning, some of you may have heard me say before. Part of me is going to apologise, but the other part of me says actually no. What I'm going to say is central to my theology as it is at the moment. It's what's really important to me, and it bears repeating. So I hope you'll hear it and appreciate it and enjoy it. I grew up mostly in the context of the Open Brethren. The Open Brethren are a worthy group of people. And they have what I look back now was with an obsession, almost an obsession, with truth as they understood it. Biblical truth. That everything is okay as long as you could prove it from the Bible. And it has quite a narrow kind of constricting way of engaging with the world. It determined everything. It determined behaviour, it determined thought patterns, it determined how we live. This understanding of what is true. As a young person, I was terrified of getting things wrong. Absolutely terrified. I had to be in the place where I was standing in the truth. The difficulty is, in the intervening 45 years since then, I have changed my mind numerous times about quite a lot of things and come to see and understand differently. I stand in a different viewpoint, still love that same scripture, but understanding it quite differently from what I might have done as a 20-year-old or as an 18-year-old. The difficulty I have then is that if we are obsessed with truth, the question I have for myself was, well, when was I standing in perfect truth? And have I arrived yet? Does anybody, apart from you, actually stand in perfect truth? And what I'm with is that if there are 9 billion people on the planet, no two of us would agree about absolutely everything. There would always be points of difference, and some of them will be quite significant. Truth is important. I want to suggest, though, it's not a centre that can hold, something that we can all gather round and be able to embrace. Many of us recognise the importance of truth. In fact, I suspect most of the 9 billion people recognise the importance of truth. The difficulty is that we cannot agree on what it looks like. We cannot agree on what it is. We live in an age of increasing polarization. None of us any longer have a settled and agreed understanding of what truth is and what it might look like. There are many references in John's Gospel, references that Jesus makes to truth and to its importance. There are more references I want to suggest, though, to love and its importance. Love is something which in the New Testament I want to suggest is central. The New Testament, of that strongest word, agape love, we can interpret to mean something like that which seeks the highest and best good of the other. It might be costly to the lover, but it is always with the intent of securing what is in the best interests of the object of that love, of the lover, of the loved. As we look at it within the context of the New Testament, love and truth need to be held together. And I just want to suggest that a loveless truth, a truth that we think of that is really important but isn't grounded in love, may not be worth clinging to and hanging on to, because ultimately it's not going to give life. Let's return to the 9 billion people. If 9 billion people can't agree on what's true, I want to suggest for the most part, the 9 billion, for the most part, can recognise love when they see it. What's really love? They can recognise an act of self-giving, sacrificial generosity in order to enhance the well-being of others. And most of us will feel ourselves profoundly moved at some level. We might feel the eyes watering up. We know there's a connection with an extravagant gift of love that we all can recognise. I want to suggest that love is a centre that can hold. Truth, not so much, but love, yes, it is a centre that we can hold, that can hold. In John's, the first of his 3 little letters, he says, God is love. Whoever lives in love lives in God, and God in them. Here's the thing. Love is grounded in the character of God. It's who God is and what God is. And it's somehow reflected in all that we see around us. Paul has this bold statement in 1 Corinthians 1 and 8, or is it 8 and 1? He says, love builds up. Knowledge puffs up. That's the truth thing. But love builds up. Love makes us more. Love expands and grows. We move along to chapter 13 and we have that amazing chapter on love. And at the end of it, it says, these 3 things abide: faith, hope and love. But the greatest of these is love. And then he goes straight into chapter 14. Follow the way of love. In chapter 16 verse 14 he says, do everything in love. And Paul through his letters talks consistently about the importance of building others up. And I want to suggest it's often implied that this is by the way of love. In Ephesians 4 and 16 we read, from Christ, the whole body joined and held together by every supporting ligament grows and builds itself up in love as each part does its work. That love builds up is always true. Anything that is loved grows, it expands, it flourishes, it flowers. Unlove, on the other hand, diminishes. It makes us smaller. It reduces, it destroys, ultimately. Unlove makes us less. Jesus, in this passage which we read in his upper room discourse, stresses the importance of love. Abide in his love as he abides in the Father's love. And then he says that we remain in his love when we obey his commands. And then he tells us what his commands are, that we love one another. Central obedience to Christ is to love. And then he tells us what love looks like. No one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. This is amazing, isn't it? There it is, at the very heart of it. This definition of love is to lay down our lives for others, to actually seek their highest and best good. And when we do that, we abide in his love as he abides in the Father's love. What's the point, we might ask? What's the fruit of this? In verse 11 we read, I have said these things to you so that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be complete, may be whole. This pathway of love is the pathway to joy. This is more than just contentment. This is more than just, I want to suggest, serenity. It's a fierce embrace of life, of well-being. It's not happiness. Happiness is so often circumstantial. Something nice has happened and so we feel happy. We've bought ourselves something and for a few moments we are happy. But joy is something which is much, much deeper. Joy evokes this deep sense of well-being, often in spite of the circumstances. Everything externally might have gone pear-shaped. Things may look awful in so many ways, and yet joy is something that wells up deep within us. And it is evoked, said Jesus, by love. I want to read the passage just to finish, just to read this passage again. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. I've said these things to you so that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be complete. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. No one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. I do not call you servants any longer, because the servant does not know what the master is doing. But I have called you friends, because I've made known to you everything that I heard from my Father. You did not choose me, but I chose you, and I appointed you to go and bear fruit that will last, so that the Father will give you whatever you ask him in my name. And I'm giving you this command, that you love one another. God bless you.